Welcome to the morning meeting, everybody. Thank you for joining. Whether you're watching on YouTube or here on two-way, we're grateful to you for spending a little time with us to start the day the way the pros do, to preview the day ahead, what's on the day book, and talk about what it might mean, and to get to a lot of your questions. So if you'd like to get into the conversation here on the two-way platform, please raise your electronic hand. We're going to get to a lot of you, we hope. And if you're watching on YouTube and you want to be on this platform, you can go to our website and sign up to be notified of these events, or you can sign up for my Substack, are the two best ways right now to be informed about how to be part of this. Daybook today, primetime battle between the presidential nominees. 8 Eastern, Vice President Harris and her running mate, Tim Walz, are in Phoenix for a rally, 8 Eastern, and Donald Trump at 10 Eastern in Bozeman, Montana. Be curious to see which of them get live cable coverage on a Friday night. So stand by for that. And then nothing for Vance, nothing for President Biden. But they did announce this morning that he and the vice president are doing an event on lowering costs for consumers next week. We'll talk about that. Doug Emhoff remains in France, nothing for the First Lady. And there's a bunch of great Olympic events you can see in the day book. So we always try to be forward-looking here. Yesterday's press conference opens the door to our first topic today, which is, can Donald Trump drive a message? There were times in the press conference yesterday he was right on point, talking about the economy and immigration and national security. And there were times when he talked about a bunch of stuff he's not supposed to talk about. So my view is that this election comes down to whether she can be defined effectively. That's not a new thought, but I think he saw that yesterday. He made an attempt to define her. And again, if you take his greatest moments, he probably did. But Tim, I think Democrats would be happy with him having a press conference every day if he stays at that level. And that's about as disciplined and focused as he can be. So what say you, Tim Hogan?
Well, look, I think if you took about 10% of that press conference and spliced it together, maybe he is staying on message. But then to your point, at other points, he's talking about crowd size and whether MLK's crowds were bigger, talking about election denialism, again, going back to some comments saying, well, people only like her because she's a woman. That's why her polls are going up, or wading into the Black and Indian controversy. I mean, there's so much there that is off message that it will, particularly for the press, will continue to be, there is something to pick there that is an outrage generating headline that defines that press conference. And I think that the problem is here, and Sean, you probably know infinitely better than me, I am not sure he knows the difference, right? I am not sure Trump knows when he's waiting.
I'm sure he does. I'm sure he doesn't.
Yeah. So that's the difficulty. Yes, do a press conference today, please.
Yeah, Sean, he's a mess.
He's what?
He's a mess. I mean, I literally think that's the best he can do. And given the filter, the press is never going to cover that. Now, some of it will break through, but do you think that's as good as he can do? And is that good enough?
Not as good as he can do, but I do think that he did what he needed to do yesterday. Where he claimed the narrative, he set the predicate for debates. That was the headline grabbing thing. I thought the way he came out, I feel like I'm judging on Dancing with the Stars. Like, he came out strong. He focused on the 3 debates. He got the narrative going that people knew what he was.
But he's only going to get 1 debate, so big deal that he focused.
No. That's a separate story. I think you're right. I think he sort of should have made this a package deal and saying, I've agreed to 3 debates. Here it is. He made the first one Fox. I think it was laid out really well, right? You make sure the Fox debate was the first one, so she's got to agree to that to get the other ones. But that's another story. I think they came out strong. And then I think he also, by going 62 minutes, 37 questions, basically made the press try to draw that contrast. I can take questions. I can go for, I can, hang with you guys for the longest. She can barely do a one-off question, unscripted. I do agree. I think there was a bunch of times he said security, safety, and jobs. And I was like, okay, perfect. Just stay right there. Stay right there. That's exactly what we wanted you to talk about: security, safety, and jobs. And then again, veered off on a bunch of issues that I don't think were as focused. But, at the end of the day, I also look at some of the things that we were worried about yesterday when we talked about the call. He never mentioned Tim Walz. He never mentioned his record. Of all of the things that he could have said about the vice president, he didn't get into a lot of stuff that I was kind of going, please keep your guardrails up. So net, I think he did what he had to do. So anyway, I think that if they can drive off of that in the next couple of days, then that's great.
Okay. So they just announced this morning that Biden-Harris event next week in Maryland. He's obviously going to have a role at the convention. It seems to me that they have some incentive, but Tim, I want you to address what that incentive would be to have Biden-Harris events and to have Biden events. But given that the whole Trump campaign is predicated on making this Trump Vance versus Biden-Harris rather than Biden-Walz, why would the Democrats play into that by doing Biden-Harris events?
Well, I think there is a ton of goodwill in the Democratic base, but also among some independents and among some folks who have swung to become Harris voters, that the Democrats were the first party where, with President Biden choosing to step down, and recognizing that decision as a huge decision, as an important decision, as a reset of the race. I don't think the threat that people are going to look at an event or two that they do and say, well, oh, this is just the past. You can't go back. There is no going back to that frame. Like, now, is that going to rile Trump up and tweet about it?
But Twim, you look at the Trump videos, they're all featuring Kamala Harris saying, Bidenomics is great, and now she's going to go to these events and have to say Bidenomics is great, isn't she?
I mean, but I don't think it is. I think there is no 100% separation of Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, right? Like that, and I don't think Democrats are playing to that, and I don't think that's the smart move. So I think them going and doing an event together doesn't significantly cement them in a way that is not already done. You know what I mean? Like there are strategic ways to look back and answer those questions, but I think them doing an event, I don't think it really changes much. I think there's a lot of goodwill for the president, so I think it's fine.
There's a chance that they're concerned about Maryland.
Yeah, that's it. They're shoring up. Well, they could be shoring up the Senate.
Valerie's asking in the chat. It could be they could be worried about Maryland.
It could be Senate race.
Sean, do you think this is I'm making too big a deal of this, or Tim's right, or what?
I mean, look, I think after 10 years of Donald Trump saying, "Did a press conference take him off schedule?" It's absolutely nuts. I think he did what he had to do. He reclaimed the narrative this morning. All the morning shows were leading with what he said. That's what he wanted. He wanted to be back in the driver's seat. That's.
I'm talking about Biden doing events with Harris.
Oh, I don't. To be honest with you, I actually will agree with Tim on this. I think that Biden stepping aside, he's now this folk hero, and people want to celebrate him for being pushed appropriately. And he played the role that they wanted him to play. So now they want to celebrate him. I don't think anyone's the path. I mean, we can frame it that way, but at the end of the day, to your point, our goal on the right is to make this a Harris Walz thing.
All right, last thing. Yeah, go ahead.
One more quick thing, because I just want to make sure. I know we talked about this yesterday. I just want to make a quick point on the Walz stuff. And of course, now it's Politico. This was something that it didn't get any attention yesterday. Politico wrote this. On its website, the Harris campaign axed a reference to Walz as, quote, a retired command sergeant major, and now says that he once served at the command sergeant major rank, a small change that nonetheless reflects his true rank at retirement from the Army National Guard. It is unbelievable that they get away with this. Regardless of what you think or not about the merits, this is not a small tweak. And yet this was sort of the way that they got the press to say, okay, it's over, move on. And I find it unbelievable that
go ahead. I want to be really careful about how I say this. I think two things are true at the same time. One is there's still a lot of unanswered questions, two particularly significant ones that he should address himself. And two, this story, and barring some new revelation, as a political matter, is dead because the Democrats and their media allies have killed it.
Two things. I just want to weigh on two things here. Reporting from Fox News and the Wall Street editorial board. Wall Street editorial board last night published, taking a phrase from the New York Sun, that this story is thin gruel. The conservative media is not latching onto this. And look, we talk, Mark, Sean, you both talk about the liberal media. A lot of the times there is a downstream effect from conservative media, from the New York Post, from Fox News, from the Wall Street editorial board to the New York Times, to other outlets. And I think the fact that the Wall Street Journal seems to not want to play ball on this story is a big point. Second, Fox News reporting actually does some useful reporting yesterday from Jennifer Griffin on the deployment question, where a Minnesota National Guard spokesperson said that we've been talking about this timeline of when he retired. We are not talking about the timeline of when he requested retirement, which is 5 to 7 months prior to the month that I laid out yesterday, which is May 2005, which means that could go all the way back to November 2004. So I'm just, my point is, and I will just say, I know we need to get on to other things. You are seeing people from Minnesota who, when this story came out in 2018 and 2020, and I know it's a different environment, who served with him, Joseph Eustace, 32 years in the Army National Guard, do not agree with a single thing that Tim Walz is
Neither
pushing
does
politically at all, saying
neither does
this is
neither
ridiculous.
does, and Pete Buttigieg thinks it's ridiculous too, but that doesn't mean the facts are ridiculous because they're not. But it's dead
it is
politically.
inside.
You
But it's
both,
someone
the bottom
inside.
line is,
Yeah.
Just but one guy, sure, one guy, but that's an opinion, not based on
in his
everybody.
troop,
Doesn't
in
represent
his
everybody.
troop, like in
Sure,
the
but there are people in his unit who felt differently. So one guy that's trotted out for the media to kill the thing, which they effectively did. Hats off to them for political expediency and effectiveness. You both owe me an apology, kind of. All right, Helen, come in, please. Tell us where you're from, who you're supporting, and what's on your mind.
Hi, so I'm Helen Burton. I live in Edwards, Colorado, which is just down valley from Vail, Colorado. I am a Harris supporter, 100%, would never vote for Trump. Regarding the debate, so what Trump did in his debate with Biden, I guess, is something that's called the Gish Gallop, which just says that when you speak, you just spew out a whole bunch of lies and mistruths to the point that you overwhelm your opponent. So when it's their turn to respond, they can't respond, because also anytime you tell a one sentence lie, it takes you 10 seconds to tell that lie, and it takes minutes to counteract that. So, clearly Biden got hung up on that, but I'm really concerned that, anybody who were to debate somebody who does that strategy really can't effectively respond. So I kind of believe she needs to take an approach of every time it's time for her to rebut what he says, she starts out with, okay, well, here you told all these lies. Now let me tell you, what's actually going on, or let me tell you what my policy is. And don't even try to go, to respond to him. So I guess I'm just looking for your guys' thoughts and comments about, just how Trump does the debate, and how do you effectively counter his debate strategy?
Helen, can we tell the Harris folks you're available for debate prep?
Sure.
Okay. Tim, Sean, what do you guys think?
First of all, I love the use of Gish Gallop. We should be saying it more. It just rolls off the tongue. Look, I think there's a way to debate, and I also want to preface this with, he did not have a good debate when he debated Joe Biden. I don't think anybody really looked at Donald Trump in that debate and was like, wow, stellar job. So, walking into this next debate with Harris, I think he is in a load of trouble. I know he needs to ask for them because he feels like the trajectory is going the wrong direction. I think part of the way that you deal with it is not privileging the attack or privileging the lie in how you answer. You have to pick ones that you feel are critical that you need to push back on, but then you need to get to your point. I mean, this is like a little bit, you go on Fox News and you're in a segment and have to answer it. You come in with your prepared points, and then you hear 8 things that you want to talk about because they're incorrect. But you have to come in with your solid answers to whatever the questions are, and then pick, if there are really egregious ones, 1 to 2 attacks to push back on, but you have to do it really quick, and you can't get bogged down. You can't do too much detail, because if you do, you're wasting your time and not pushing your message.
I would just say this. I think the more that the president can cite aspects of his record and contrast that to the multiple positions she's had on a series of issues, the better, right? So she wants to talk about energy independence, talk about what she said on fracking, and with respect to Pennsylvania. I mean, she has been on both sides of so many issues that John Kerry is excited.
Helen, how'd you find out about the morning meeting?
Oh, I've been following you ever since you were on MSNBC, and then once you were off TV for a while and started your newsletter, I was an early subscriber. So long-time fan.
Helen. Thank you. Thank you for joining. Come back regularly. All right. Let me just ask, guys, do we have the ad, the new Harris ad? If we do, I'd love to play it for everybody. While we wait to see if we have that, let's bring in Luke. Luke, come on in. Tell us where you're from. Oh, wait a minute. Stand by, Luke. All right, let's take the ad full. This is a new Harris ad, which Punchbowl says is on in Philadelphia. I just want to get Tim and Sean's view of this.
Kamala Harris has spent decades fighting violent crime. As a border state prosecutor, she took on drug cartels and jailed gang members for smuggling weapons and drugs across the border. As vice president, she backed the toughest border control bill in decades. And as president, she will hire thousands more border agents and crack down on fentanyl and human trafficking. Fixing the border is tough. So is Kamala Harris.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
That's one tough commander-in-chief, Tim.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Tough. I mean, like this is
Yeah.
this is what they have been doing from the beginning, and it makes sense. Again, because of particular attacks on this issue, I think I said early on, it would make sense for them to go on up with a defensive ad on this. I do think like there is a chance that they are able to move the needle a little bit. But it is also just their message frame that she is tough, that she is a prosecutor. It is interesting, and this is just like, a little bit of how political campaigns run. A lot of the rally messaging right now is we're not going back, we're looking forward. Joyful warriors, happy warriors. This is what's up on TV, what's up on digital targeted. There's a lot of abortion ads right now. So it's like those are all this in the swirl and the mix of this campaign. And I do think this ad is pretty good.
Tim, what about the choice not to mention Donald Trump, either say he's lying about her record or saying he's weak on the border? What do you think of that choice?
Yeah, I mean, 30 seconds, right? Short. And I think the goal here is to shore up her background and bio on this issue. I think because they're still doing an introduction of her and there's still a definition question, makes sense.
John?
I mean, I couldn't help but laugh. The idea that you're trying to talk about being tough on the border, it flies in the face of everything that people see every day. It's like saying that prices are lower right now. You're asking people to be stupid. I think this was a mistake. The idea of saying that she's been tough on the border literally flies in the face of things that they see on the news every night, images that they're seeing on social media. I would not have gone with this tactic. I mean, I think she wanted to be tough on crime prosecutor, maybe because she wasn't really in her purview as vice president, so she could have gotten away with that a lot more. This was, to me, a really stupid out of the gate mistake. But I'm glad that there was.
But just very quickly, like if you are kind of losing the earned battle on something, right? You go for paid. You just like tactically.
I just wouldn't have gone this early. I would have. I mean, my point is, build her up as a tough prosecutor and say that she was tough on crime early. She knows how to take this on. There could have been a better issue as people learn about her for there to cement their thing. But to try to fly in the face of a narrative is swimming against a very strong tide.
Yeah, Luke, come on in. Tell us where you're from, who you're supporting, and what's on your mind.
My name is Luke. I am living in Beijing, China, but from Washington State, and I'm voting for Trump. I have a question because I've been thinking about this. We had somebody a couple of weeks ago was talking about, the Palestine issue, and there were a couple of protesters that were there yesterday at the Kamala event. And the big question is if she doesn't give a really big answer on these kind of Israel things, is she going to be having kind of the issues that were happening in 68, where we're going to have a lot of big fights going on? And also, if Biden comes, is he going to be able to show off that he's not as old and not scare more people into thinking, why is Kamala working with this old man and letting him still be president?
Great questions, Luke. Thank you, guys.
One is I think it's all good points. I think Biden is gonna want to talk about his legacy. He just passed the torch to the first female and blah blah blah. I mean, it plays in well. I think obviously how he delivers that message Monday night of the convention will matter. So I think that's and to your question about 68. Look, I think this is a big question. What happens outside the convention and how much coverage it gets is going to be really interesting to say. One last thing on the ad, and I noticed it in the chat, and I'm glad that some people brought it up. But it's if we're going to talk about Donald Trump and lying, that ad was a massive and blatant lie about her record, right? So you can say all you want about Donald Trump, but she talks about her positions over and over again, fracking, immigration, you name it, and puts an ad like this on. If we want to talk about misinformation and lies, there's Exhibit A.
And the scheme of political ads, there weren't that many lies in that one.
So I just, Luke, to your question, I think a couple things. I think one, again, there's so much goodwill for Biden right now. I don't think in any way he's a drag or problematic for Harris if they appear together. And two, I do think for the question of like, are we going to get 1968 in Chicago? I think people, thinking that could happen are going to be extremely disappointed. I mean, like you never say never. And we hope that doesn't happen. I don't think that it will. And Sean, I think the ad was fine. I mean, she talked about the bipartisan border bill. Like that's the solution. That's the forward-looking thing. I don't see any lie there.
Tim, are you gonna be in Chicago, Tim?
I will be in Chicago. Yeah.
Do you want to borrow one of my gas masks? You're not worried.
You know what?
need
I've
it?
gotten to
All
a
right.
point where, Mark, I should buy my own. So I'll just,
Yeah.
I'll do that.
Okay. Hey, Luke, unmute again and tell us how you found about the morning meeting all the way in Beijing, China.
Oh, I was hate watching all the people who are having a lot of problems with what was happening with the President Biden after he failed so miserably in the debates, and just kind of seeing the miserable faces that were on them. And your Joe just came up. So
okay, thank you, man. Spread the word in Beijing. I recommend the duck. Luke, thank you. Salib, is that pronounced correctly?
Well, actually, my name is Joe. I'm not really sure why it's displaying that way, but
all right.
Good morning.
Joe, good morning.
Thank you so
Tell
much.
us thank you. Tell us where you're from, who you're supporting, and what's on your mind.
I'm from Florida. I'm strongly considering writing in a candidate. But gun to my head, if I had to pick between the two, I can't afford another 4 years like we've had. So I would have to lean towards Trump. I just want to say, Mark, I love your appearances on Megyn Kelly, and I hope you do more of them. And it's a great honor for me to.
It's more up to Megyn than it is to me, but thank you.
But it is a great honor for me to be breathing in the same airwaves as Mr. Spicer as well. I've been following him for a long time.
Thank you.
I just want to make 2 points if I can.
You remind me how we're cousins.
What's that?
How are we related then?
Well, maybe if you do ancestry.com, you'll find out. You'd be surprised. I think Republicans need to drop this whole thing about Kamala Harris being installed. To my mind, as an independent, I think the Republican primaries were a coronation for Trump. I think he was crowned 2 years before the process started. I think the RNC put their thumb on the scale. They shut out people like Larry Elder, and yet somehow had people like Asa Hutchinson up on the stage. They never forced Trump to debate. They never put any pressure on him. And even conservative influencers like Charlie Kirk were advocating for all the candidates to drop out before Iowa and just endorse Trump. And in fairness, President Biden all but resigned the presidency. Had he resigned the presidency, Kamala Harris would be the incumbent president and the presumptive nominee. So I don't think I know it was kind of crazy to watch Schumer say it was grassroots from the bottom up and all that, but I just don't think it gets him anything to be going on this line of attack. The second point, Jim. The second point in relation to yesterday, I think Trump needs to be converting people. And I don't think he converted anyone between his appearance at the Black Journalist Conference. In my opinion, he blew opportunities to straighten out the record. 8 years later, he can't even quote his own words at Charlottesville. I think, precision matters, and it's not his strong suit.
So, Joe, why aren't you voting for Trump, Joe?
I didn't say I'm not.
Well, why aren't you? Oh, you said you might, but you said you might write somebody in. Why aren't you an automatic Trump voter under the circumstances?
Well, I think it's a lose-lose situation. I think if Trump wins, I don't know what the country is going to look like 4 years from now. I think another Republican to succeed him is going to be completely unpalatable, because at that point, we would have had 12 years of Trump. And if he loses, I'm very concerned about the direction of the country.
Joe, thank you. Thank you, Joe.
Sure.
Don't mean to cut you off. I want to get some other folks in. Thank you. Appreciate you joining. Tyler, unmute. Go ahead, please.
Real quick, I would just say to Joe's point, I agree with you. Process, I've said this over and over again for those who've been following, process does not get votes. No one cares. It sucks that he got pushed out, blah, 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 but no one's voting on process. They're voting about whether you can make your life better or not, the country's safer, better than not, et cetera.
And your candidate talked a ton about it yesterday at his press conference.
Can you guys hear me?
Tyler. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Okay. I live up in northern Indiana, so kind of in that Ohio, Michigan media market. cried in my dorm room, I think, when Mitt Romney lost, but when John Kasich left the party or lost in 2016, I think that was the last Republican I found palatable to vote for. So voted for Hillary in 2016, Biden in 2020. I think this year I was going to either write a name in or leave it blank. I couldn't find voting for Biden in the state he was in kind of palatable to vote for. But I think with the Harris Walz ticket, super, super excited. I mean, went from watching the debates and like praying that he wouldn't stumble over every next word to now some of these like the mini issues that come up, like the Master Chief Sergeant or what the ranks were. I just feel like the level at which the issues that we can complain about the ticket have really dropped down. I'm just curious with your guys' insight, if you think if in a month or so, if Harris is still leading by 2 or 3 points in a lot of the swing states, if Trump might dump Chris LaCivita and Susie, or if you think he'll do kind of a shakeup like he did in 2016.
Good question.
Sean on that one.
I gotta hold on, the phone's ringing. I one of the things that I will always say about Trump is don't ever say he won't do something. I don't know that a 2 or 3 point poll would shake him, but you saw yesterday, it was when that tweet came out where it said, or the truth, whatever it was, saying I'm doing a press conference today. That's Trump. He did it. He said, I want to have I can't say I have any insight in that particular, but I've seen that movie. He gets into a point where he says, I want to do something today to shake up the narrative. Here's what's happening. I had it happen in the White House. So we're going to do a press conference today. I'm like, okay. And so to the extent that he says we need a shakeup and I'm going to talk to so-and-so or somebody comes in, this is where I wouldn't be shocked if it's additive at some point. I think by large margins, most people, even if you read that there's a story with Anita Dunn today in Politico, give LaCivita and Susie a lot of credit for the things that they've done. So if anything, I would see more of an additive thing. But right now, I don't see that. I never rule out anything with Trump is probably the best way to put it.
Okay.
Yeah. Tyler, thank you, man. Thank you for the question. Sam, go ahead, please.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Mark. Appreciate it. And been enjoying the show since I was experiencing some Schadenfreude after the Joe Biden collapse. I'm in Texas. I'm leaning heavily towards Trump. I'm actually a Californian. I'm natively from California, and I moved to Texas a couple years ago. So I'm a refugee here. I think the reason I actually got on the call, I was watching on YouTube Live, and I actually got on the call after I listened to that ad because it just seems so insulting to anyone that's been paying attention for at least the past 3 months and beyond. It just seems so insulting to try and convince voters that Kamala Harris is all of a sudden this tough on the border person, where really what stands out to me as an average voter is the huge failure at the border, living in 2 border states over the past 20 years. So yeah, I just wanted to share that point of view. And then secondly, I think people have overestimated the degree to which Black voters have swung back towards the Democratic Party. I think, to the people in my life and the Black folks in my life, it comes down to the economy. The cost of living has just gone through the roof to the point that a big part of the reason I moved to Texas is economic. I'm a millennial. I'm starting a family, buying a home. I've got 2 kids now, 2 young kids. And to me, it just comes down to that. And I get the fact that a lot of people are turned off by Trump's behavior, tweets, and all of that kind of thing. But at the end of the day, like the only thing I care about more than anything is taking care of my kids and putting food on the table and a positive economic outlook for them.
Sam, on your circle,
That's awesome.
has it did it switch at all? Like, did they come over, do you think, to Trump, or were they always there?
There was a lot of quiet Trump support. I'll speak to like my family. I was the first one in 2020 to, in a public setting say, hey, I think I'm gonna go for the orange guy. And there was always this presumption that he's a racist, he's this and he's that. And I actually started watching full rallies from top to bottom. and listening to the things he said. And it really opened my mind. I started sending, anytime a rally came on, I'd send it to my brother and friends of mine. And we started just listening to what he was saying. And as bombastic as it is, if you just kind of went into the inside track of those extreme crazy things he says, it made a lot of sense. And if you listen to the economic arguments he was making through the 80s and the 90s, it made total sense. He seems far more reasonable when you actually listen to the core message that he's had over the past, few decades. He's actually been very, very consistent. But the dressing is obviously sometimes a little difficult to take for a lot of people.
Yeah, Sam, thank you. Really appreciate it. How old are your kids?
6 and 1.5.
Awesome. Thank you for participating. Hope you'll come back regularly. All right, guys, we're going to close out with the man I like to call Greg from Manhattan, who said he has a quick point to make. Greg, unmute. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. I'll put you in the E-block next time on my show. Listen, real quick, the Walz military thing, I agree that the rank thing is not that significant. It's very arcane, and it's not going to resonate. The thing with avoiding service in Iraq is bigger, but still survivable. When he stood in front of that crowded room and boasted, shouted that he served in war with a weapon, that is a huge, huge deal. That is the essence of stolen valor. I've noticed that a lot of media are focusing on the rank situation and they're poo-pooing it, which I think you can. The thing about the boast, people can understand that. It's one thing if a bunch of veterans are upset. I think regular people can understand that. That is stolen valor right there. This was not adjudicated in the local press in Minnesota. If this does not become a more significant issue, well, it's further confirmation of just how thoroughly corrupt the media are. The same media that covered for Joe Biden, that's pretending that Kamala Harris is qualified for anything. If they don't pick this issue up, it is just another, sign, confirmation that we're in this crazy Orwellian world. You can't boast that you served in war. It's disrespectful to those who did serve in war. And quite frankly, it's disrespectful to the people he was with in Italy. It's dangerous being in the military, even in peacetime. But he's saying that's not good enough. People can understand that there might be other examples of it, and it deserves to be a huge issue right now.
Greg, I have to say, just journalistically, I still put that one third of the three, but everybody can have their own view, and I deference to those who had served, but just journalistically, I put that one third. Tim, go ahead.
No, that was the point I was going to make. I think of the three, that would be the third. He never said he served in war. He said he carried a weapon. If you listen to the quote again, I understand people hear it a different way, but it is what it is. I'm not worried about that.
Yeah. All right, Greg, thank you, man. I look forward to being on in the E-block.
Real quick,
ahead,
shout out to Greg Kelly for his service. The guy knows how to land a plane on a carrier, so that gives you a level of qualification that's worth noting. One other quick thing that I just want to throw this out there because it came up in some discussions I have, and I'm being serious about this. I'm not making it an issue, but there are some questions about his overuse of the word coach. And that people saying that he was presenting himself as a winning coach that took the state to the championship. I didn't know this until I looked into it because I said, what are you talking about? That he was the defensive coordinator. I just throw this out there because I know you're laughing, okay? But you guys dismiss.
No, go for it. Go for it.
Let's have this debate.
Let's have this debate.
I was going to give you the winning lottery tickets too, but no Powerball numbers for you.
All right. We ran over. Apologies to the affiliates. Apologies to those of you who have work to get to. Grateful to you for making time. We'll be back Monday morning, 9 a.m. Eastern time for the morning meeting. I may be back later for one of my random unnamed specials. I may do something tonight. Don't know yet. We'll have to see what goes on with the news. If not, I'll be back Monday as well. But we appreciate you making time. Got in a bunch of you. We always want to get in more. Thank you for those with the hands up and those who participated. Have a great day. And if we don't see you later, a great weekend. And we'll see you Monday morning. Same bad time, same bad channel. Morning meeting. Goodbye.